Yeah, Yvonne, maybe I'm gonna explain the two different ways that I think you can do questions, and then maybe you can chat about that perfectionism and how bad it is. Because I know a lot of students complain that when they do questions, it takes forever to do. So if you do a 40-mark question, it should take you a 60 minutes to do it, but then it ends up taking you 5 hours to do it. And I see the type of questions. I know that's how students do the questions because they ask, where did that number come from? And I'm like, that little number, you worried about that for half an hour. And so doing a question doesn't mean you take that 40-minute question that should take 60 minutes because it's 1.5 minutes per mark. And now you go through it, you get stuck after 5 minutes, you don't know where, you look at the solution a bit, you see there's a complicated calculation. Now I spend half an hour to trying to figure out where that number came from. Then you say, now I've got it, so I've learned something. Now I move on to the next part of the question. You struggle for a bit, sit there, make a couple of notes, and then you go to the solution again. You see a number that doesn't look familiar, you audit the whole thing, you look back at the formula, because that's the
Yeah,
type of questions that we get. Is this someone did
yeah,
this question, but they took it apart. They took apart the solution and said, where does this come? I don't understand this formula. Where did this? And
yeah,
now they feel like this 5 hours they only did one question. So how the hell can they do a whole question bank full of questions?
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Um, and the problem with that time, instead of, because remember, you also need, another problem is time management. So people want to
mm,
know, how do I get faster? Because I take 5 hours to do a 40-mark question. Well, you can't get, it's like interval training for running. You can't get faster if you run at a 7-minute pace all the time. You have to work faster to become faster. So, so
yeah.
how do we do the questions if we,
The starting point comes down to the the starting point comes down to the purpose of doing questions. And again, this is so important that you understand the difference between the focus on the answer versus the process. So, as accountants and as accounting students, our personality type, we're very focused on the answer. Like the answer must be right, the answer, which is why most of you will sit and pull apart the questions and the answers for hours and hours and hours and hours and hours. Like, where did that number come from? Where did that number come from? Where did that number come from? And you pull these things apart for hours and hours because you must get the answer right. You must know how to do it. Okay, that's very much focusing on the answer, but that's not the same as sitting in an exam where you have a limited amount of time where you have to get 50%. So what I find students are missing is that they're not paying attention to the goal of what they're studying is. Okay, so the goal of studying, and again, like, pay close attention to this. Your goal when you're studying, okay, is to get to a point where you are able to get half the marks on the mark plan. Okay, you need 50%, like we know that. So, Yvonne, I just want to pass. I want to get 50%. That's great. But that means that your goal then is, I need to be able to go into an exam and answer a question to the point that I am able to get half of the marks on the mark plan. That is your goal. That is very different to the goal of, I must know the detailed answer to every single component of every single question, even if it takes me 600 hours to do. You don't have 600 hours in the exam, so that's irrelevant. What you are able to do in 600 hours means nothing. We only care about what you're able to do within the time in the exam because that's all you have. So one of the things that I struggle with students is, you need to understand that a lot of your study process, you need to be simulating what you're working towards. It's like saying that you're working towards running a marathon, and the way that you're working towards running a marathon is by walking on a treadmill. Will walking on a treadmill prepare you for running a marathon? Yes? No? No, it won't. Can you see the disconnect between walking on a, yeah, sure, you'll get like fitter and you'll get stronger, you're walking on a treadmill, but are you guys comfortable with the fact that there's a whole bunch of stuff about running a marathon that you're not going to get right and you're not going to prepare if all you ever do is walk on a treadmill? You guys, thumbs up. Can you understand what I'm saying? Can you see the disconnect? The difference between the way that you prepare for something, you've got to look at the outcome. You've got to say, what am I working towards? Now, guys, here's what you're working towards. You are working towards an exam that says, I want you to be able to answer a question you've never seen before in a limited amount of time with limited knowledge. Go. And you only have to get half the marks. That is the goal. But that's not what you study towards. What you study towards is, how do I get this answer right? 600 hours later. How do I get this answer right? 600 hours later.